Unconventional Life. Welcome. This is your host, Jules Schroeder, tuning in today from Boulder, Colorado. Today's guest is joining us from California, Ayla, Nereo in the house. Ayla, are you ready to take us down the path less traveled?
Yes.
So excited to have this woman on the show. I think we've been trying to get you on the show for maybe 8 months or something.
I think so.
Just trusting the timing of all of it. And for those of you that don't know Ayla, she is an amazing songstress, singer, loop pedalist, dancer, upcoming filmmaker, and also an activist who, really has this unique blend of sound, using your connection with, the earth and all these different interests that you have into your music, and really inspiring this new wave of everything what's possible with music. And I know, you're reaching millions of different listeners, that you've toured all the way through Europe, and you've been to Australia, you've got a big base in the US. And I find also using your gifts as a way with your workshops and how to bring out the art of song, and then also embodiment into your dance. And I feel like you're combining all these yummy pieces that define the unconventional life. And so I've been a fan of yours, and wanted to definitely have you on the show. And so with that, fill in any gaps I might have left out and give us a glimpse into your personal life.
Oh, thanks. Gosh, I don't know. Is there anything in particular of the personal life?
Yeah, well, tell us, I find too, we've definitely been in a series where we've had a lot of really extraordinary musicians and artists on the show, and those that aren't just necessarily one-dimensional, that are doing a lot of different components. And how is it for you blending all of the pieces of your self-expression into the work that you're doing?
It's amazing. I mean, I think for a long time, when I was still coming into songwriting, and I've been a writer my whole life, and since I was could write the alphabet basically, and I've always also been a dancer. And I think for a while I had this feeling of I have all these passions, but how do they come together? I don't know how they all fit together. Maybe I'm just going to do lots of jobs, or have lots of things. And so over the last few years, especially, seeing how my love of songwriting and sharing it with people, combined with my dancer self on stage and also in the music videos, and then my love of filmmaking with these music videos that are increasingly being made, and then my care for the planet, and just the passion I have for our collective evolution and awakening as humans, and remembering our deep remembering of our place on this planet, and our relationship with all life, and then also my teacher self. I've always kind of felt comfortable in that role, in a way, facilitating. And so the workshops that I do are sort of the behind the scenes of the songwriting, and the behind the scenes of just helping people feel empowered to then create on their own. It feels like it all, I just feel so lucky. It's all woven together in this way I couldn't have predicted, but it unfolded. It revealed itself as I went.
Yeah. How was it for you trusting that process of revealing? Because I think, especially for so many of us, when you're in it, can be day after day. I know you're just about to release your 6th album. And so sometimes you're just going and you're how is this going to work? Does anyone care? Or is am I reaching anybody? And so how was that process in yourself?
Yeah. It's definitely taken a lot of surrender. I mean, I definitely have had countless moments on my journey where I didn't trust, where I felt I wanted to make something happen, or I'm trying over here, or I want this to look this way, the way we think it's going in a direction, we want to help it along, or try and, I don't know, a lot of old high school stuff that I had to encounter around external validation and being seen and all of that. And at the same time being afraid of being seen and all of those things. And just, it's such a complex journey. And it really, like you said, is the word is trust. And it's taken a whole lot of trust. And there was a point actually just about a year ago where I sort of had to like release everything. It was almost exactly a year ago, a little less. And I've been doing music for a while, and felt like I was kind of just like trying so hard, like really working hard at it, and feeling like I've definitely like, you know, over the last 5 years made a really good career for myself. But I think that my system is like bigger than what was happening, like the visions I have and what wants to be created. And so I felt like this push-pull thing. And I really just, about a year ago, I totally released a lot of dreams. I didn't release the beauty of the dreams, but I released the parts of the dreams that were actually maybe imprinted by external sources, like this is how a musician's path looks, or this is what this looks like, or, and those accidentally, it's so easy for those to trickle in and then govern our choices, because it's like, oh well, everyone else is doing it this way, so I should fit into this, or I should do it this way. And I just completely released it. And it was not easy. It was like a 3-day heart-wrenching breakup process, essentially, with that part of my ego. And then ever since then, things have been flowing. And it's this lesson that I feel like has been confirmed and affirmed over and over and over in my life, is every time I let something bigger lead me, and I let go of my idea of how it's going to look and really release that, which is hard, then everything flows. And whenever I'm trying, it's like the creative energies are like, no, not like this. We're not doing it like this. So yeah, just in the last 6 months, my whole team just arrived. It was like the universe was like, oh, you've asked for this for 3 years. Like, here you go. Here's the whole team. And now things are like really moving. And I feel like I'm just releasing every day now, like more and more and more. It's an amazing thing, that balance of having a vision and then letting go of the attachment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even, the art of releasing, and I call it even declaring certain pieces complete, along the way. Yeah. And, there you are, you're, 5, 4, 3, however many years into this career, like really building, all the pieces. And then to hit a point of like, an inflection point is maybe also how I describe it, where it's like what maybe conventional wisdom or the shoulds. And I think so many of us can relate to this. This is how it should look. This is what you should have. And then also tuning in, it sounds like, well, what do I want? And if I get to choose how it goes, what actually feels right for me? And that process, I find is like universal. Like so many of us can go through it. How did you slow down enough to give yourself that space? And for someone that's hearing this right now, that's like, okay, Ayla, I'm in this, place right now. Like I'm feeling like something's time to let go, but I don't know, I'm afraid to let go. And how do I let go? And like, just give us a little bit of your perspective on that and any advice you could give.
Wow. It's so hard. That's the first thing. It's like acknowledging how hard it is to like, and yet so easy. That's the interesting thing about letting go of those things, is that it's really just our mind. It's just that choice. It's like a commitment in our mind to just release that thing that maybe, I think it's also matters what we're letting go of, like having the discernment of what is not actually energetically in alignment with our path, and it's really just like each person's intuition has to tune into that. It feels, but yeah, for me, what it looked like was giving myself full permission to grieve. Like I literally was like grieving for 3 days, and just letting, and this was like a really deep version of letting go. Like there was a lot of like built up stuff that had happened. But even on a smaller level, like allowing ourselves to feel all the feelings that might come up, like tightness or fear or whatever it is, and really allow that process. It helps that energy move.
So good.
And just like that, our minds are so powerful, and it really is also that easy that we just choose.
Yeah, Absolutely. So if we were to go back in time, kind of into the backstory of you and your younger years, I mentioned earlier that songwriting has always been something that's been in you, but did you ever like envision it would be your full-time career? Did you ever think it was a possibility, or like, what would we have seen like along the way, some of the milestones if you were a fly on the wall, like either in high school, or did you go to university, or what were some of the shaping moments?
Yeah. Well, I danced, and I actually did make chord progressions on the piano. I loved playing the piano growing up, but I never contemplated being a musician, ever. It was something my older brother did. I have two older half siblings that are quite a lot older. So my younger brother and I were like the babies, and they were older, and he did music. And then my younger brother started doing music, and I was like, cool, they're all doing that. I want to be a filmmaker. That was like when I was 12, I was like, I'm going to be a film director, and I'm going to work with this. I'm going to collaborate with Steven Spielberg. And I just had like dreams. And so dancing and filmmaking were my things. I never thought about making music. And I actually was afraid of singing. A lot of people don't know, but I was terrified of singing growing up through my early adolescence, through high school, all the way into college. Terrified of it. And it was a total irrational fear. I had a friend who is tone deaf, and so I would hear her singing, and then I worry that maybe I'm tone deaf and no one's telling me. So it's just one of those things that just got put in there, and I just decided to not sing. And so when I hit college, I started learning guitar, and at the end of my very last year of college, songs actually started coming through, and I very timidly shared them with friends, and they just kept asking me to sing. And every time there was a group, I lived in a big 50-person co-op, a hippie co-op at Stanford University. And it was like I had been in this super, super brain polarized academic world for so long. And my soul was like, it was just so hungry at that point. And then I went into this free spirited community of people, and it just opened something up. And literally they like pulled it out of me because I was so scared of singing. I'm just so grateful to those friends, because I wouldn't have taken it seriously otherwise at all. And my brother was making music, so then we started playing music together and had a band that we played in for years, for like probably 3 or 4 years. And then I started doing my own solo stuff, and that was feeling like it's time to give to this. And there were points along the journey where I decided that, I'm probably just a recording artist, because performing is so uncomfortable. Like I just felt so nervous to get in front of people and sing. And then that even shifted. It was like every step of the way, all those things I could have just said, oh, I'm not going to perform. Oh, I'm not going to sing. Oh, I'm not going to do this. And instead, I just kind of, for some reason, I just decided to keep doing it. Something was propelling me. And I then learned so much about performing and how it's like such a magical, energetic thing. And as long as I'm occupying a certain frequency, then it doesn't really matter. Even if something gets messed up sonically, like the vibration is there. And just learning so much along the journey, really by pushing through a lot of discomfort, like an extreme amount of discomfort along the way.
Yeah, I can imagine. So there you are, like you're at Stanford University. It's like almost your last year. You're like find yourself in this like hippie kind of commune area, and like friends are drawing at these songs. And what were you studying at the time? What did you think?
Psychology.
Okay, so you're psychology and going on a certain going on a certain trajectory. Yeah, and then end up really being moved into this music path. And were you doing music coming out of Stanford? Were you working another job as well, or was it kind of like, did that start to just take its precedent, or was it like, how was that relationship?
Yeah, I grew up homeschooled. I up until high school, I was totally unschooled at home with my brother, and it was so free and so we were so empowered with our learning. Like it was really like I loved learning, and I learned everything I could, and then high school and college sort of like a lot of that got really shut down because it's such a different system of like grades and measuring. And I learned so much from being part of it too. But then in college I decided to study learning, so through psychology. And so I learned a lot about how our public education system is basically backwards from how all the research says children learn best. But it was very fascinating to learn that. So I decided, well, I'm interested in this, so I'm going to do tutoring. So I did tutoring for a long time. I started a kind of my own just tutoring business. And that started to turn into just kind of organically, I put it out there with the tutoring that I also could do private songwriting lessons with kids. And so then that kind of started happening. That was actually, now that I'm thinking about it, that was so fun. These kids were brilliant. I was just like, oh my God. And then the songwriting, then the shows kept happening and the songwriting was happening. Eventually I just phased out the tutoring completely. And also I started using the loop pedal, and that was a turning point. That was when I took my first solo tour, and it was the first time I made money on any tour ever. It wasn't much, but it was kind of this energetic thing. It was a big turning point in my life, actually. On that tour, it felt like the universe was telling me, you can go back to Oakland where you're living and pay high rent where you need to do side jobs, or you can just find a different route and do music full time. And it was just this huge feeling of like, this is what I'm here to do. So am I going to keep dilly-dallying, or am I going to just do it? So I left Oakland, and a whole bunch of other things lined up, because I mean, in a way it felt like a sacrifice. I think that's something I often think about, because oftentimes we are faced with those choices of giving it all to our passion, but then there might be a sacrifice of like moving out of the community that we're used to, or not having as much money. Like oftentimes people like have a comfortable job and they're used to making a certain amount of money. So it was like, I just felt what happened when I actually just withdrew all that energy and took a risk and was poor for a while and lived in a little tiny like side fixed up room that costs like $200 a month or something crazy. I don't know how I found that. But it was just like all these little things that allowed me to be like, I'm a full-time musician now. And it actually happened rather quickly, like what moved from that point. So
yeah, totally. There's a lot of richness in what you're saying. I think one, it's like the confirmations and noticing where the confirmations are. Like, okay, I'm going to like lock in the frequency of like full-time musician, and then trust and release, and then see what shows up as a result. And then simultaneously getting the feedback from your environment of more opportunities. So like, okay, keep going. Yeah. And, I think for all of our listeners, it's a hard battle to kind of know, like, when are the moments that you double down, and when are the moments where it's good to like play a little bit safe. And, if you could kind of speak to that for a second, like anything you would say, like of when you know to double down or when to play it safe. And I know it's your own operating system, your own way that you receive your intuition, your insight. But if you could like slow it down a little bit, like how do you tune into your own operating system? And for someone that's hearing this, that gets these informational pings or intuitive insights, yet doesn't necessarily know how to reliably relate to them, I don't know, any pieces you could share on that?
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good question. Well, everyone has, the more I've learned about our different systems, I've come to understand that everyone has a different operating system for that kind of guidance. So for me, I've learned that that it's not at all in my head. I think for most of us, it's not in our head, actually. It's actually like more in my gut. So it's like this initial like yes or no kind of feeling. For other people, it might be in their heart or somewhere else, And so, and maybe for some people it is in their head, but I think it's something I've noticed is that the signal can get really muddied if I think a lot about it. So it requires me to pay really close attention to that initial feeling.
Yeah.
Because if I don't pay close enough attention to that initial hit, then my mind will start saying lots of things and pros and cons and and if I don't have that anchor of like the initial hit, then I'm like totally just making a decision up here.
Yeah.
A lot of those kind of pivotal choices that I was mentioning, they came from a feeling of like, I mean, usually there's this beautiful combination. It's like the big like energetic sign of like go here is when there's this combination of like I want that and I'm terrified. And it has both those ingredients. Usually if it's just one or the other, it's not as like clear. But if it has both, and it doesn't have to be like you're terrified, it could be like I'm really nervous to make that leap or to try that thing or to show up that way or whatever it is. But I like notice that when other people do that, that's what I want so much for myself. That's a really good indicator of where it's time to jump.
Yeah, I love that. It relates to what I call it. I either say I feel like I'm either batshit crazy or totally onto something. And that like intersection line of having those two ingredients says, so good. And, to transition a little bit, into that, I imagine, some of that comes into your songwriting. And I'm curious for those that are artists, that are musicians listening to this, any tidbits you can speak to about songwriting, and I think more so allowing the essence of what is coming through, I feel like is something you do really well, to just be delivered and that process. Any nuggets to share in there?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. This is
a big question.
Because there's like so much that's so exciting to share, and the workshops go into it much more deeply. But I mean, my orientation, just briefly, towards songwriting is it's like, it feels like receptivity. It feels like I'm receiving something, but it doesn't mean that I'm passive. That's a big thing I've learned over the years, is that when I started songwriting, it felt like, well, they might come anytime. I'm not really sure. I'm just going to be here, and be available. And I realized, especially over the last few years, that there's actually a meeting halfway that happens. And a lot of it is about creating the container, creating the environment, creating the stimulus that then calls in the song, and then I receive it, So I've done a lot of like, okay, I want to be writing song, like working on this last album. There were a lot of days where I would just block off time. And that's a huge thing, is like making time for our creativity, making time for our passion work, for our work in the world, whatever it is, even if we're still doing a side job, to really make some time, even if it's like 20 minutes a day, just something. And so I chose that, okay, this is my work. At this point, this is a 2-hour a day deal minimum, So I would like carve out that time, but then what I did with that time was up to me. And some days I would record if I had a song that needed recording. But other days I was like, I want to write, and I don't know what I want to write about. And so I would like read poetry and read books and get on the piano and just play things, and then record it all, and then like listen back and go back to parts that I liked and catalog it all so I could go back a different day and listen to things. And just like really like I found that creativity really likes to keep moving. So as long as I'm keeping it moving and not like stopping and thinking about it, it tends to then come through.
Yeah.
There's so much more.
Yeah. so good. In the allowing of coming through, how do you allow it to come through without getting your like own mental filter and like the natural humanness of all of us, right? That was like, that's not very good. No, that's a stupid idea. Oh, I don't have any more good songs left in me. Or like, wow, this is freaking awesome. Like how do you be with that in yourself as well?
It's tricky. I mean, it still happens for sure. It's kind of natural, but I think at this point, my relationship to music and words is that I pretty much don't judge what's coming through. I've given myself full permission to edit it later, but not now. Like that can happen later. And every day is different too. Like some days like things are flowing, and some days I'm like crossing lines out a lot because it's not right. And some days I actually will notice that like a song was moving, and then I start like thinking about it too much, and I need to go take a break and do something different and come back because yeah, if the mind gets too in there, it's hard to keep it moving. It feels like the judgment thoughts are what closes the channel. So basically any way that I can, I mean, you know, even like playing a song and writing and then feeling it stop and getting up and just like dancing for a second and just like coming back, you know, anything that can kind of keep those thoughts in check.
Yeah. And movement, it sounds like, being like a really core
and even like the choice. Like I've had a lot of moments where I notice that that's happening, and I'm like, oh, I'm doing that thing where I'm thinking too much. I'm trying to find the right words. What is this song really about? What's the essence that started this? What was the feeling I had when it first started coming through? And trying to contact that feeling usually opens the channel up again.
Yeah, so good. And for all of those that are tuning in, I mean, just like such valuable insight to the creative process, whether you're writing songs yourself or, you know, it's in your different mediums. And so last little part I want to talk about before we go into the rapid fire round, which will be our last lightning round of questions, is really in managing like the business side of it. And then also like, I know you've done a lot of stuff with like the Polish ambassador and, you know, toured 33 some cities in 6 weeks, you know, working on herbalism action days. And so you're also combining a lot of impact focused stuff with the work that you're doing. And so why is the impact piece important to you? And for those that are interested in really bringing more impact stuff into the work that they're doing, how have you done it in your own life, and any advice or tips you could give?
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, I care so deeply about the health of the planet, and also about well, not just the planet, but the creatures, the living beings that are on this planet, and our health too as humans, both physically and, you know, our consciousness, our collective healing that's happening. And so I find that it's not a separate thing at all. It's woven into every song that I write, and it's woven into the choices I make, and, you know, bringing reusable things on tour. So I'm not, you know, just like all these little choices. I feel like I have so much room to do more carbon offsetting, you know, all of those things. But then so I did permaculture action tour with David, and then herbalism action days are something that I'm doing more because I care so much about our empowerment in our health, and particularly understanding what foods and plants live around us that are our medicine. You know, some of them are for more acute things like actual sicknesses, but some of them, you know, are just for the overall upkeep of health and vitamins and minerals. And for us to understand that is to reclaim our health and our capacity to heal ourselves, which then makes us more sovereign and less dependent on this external system that's quite broken at this point. You know, I think Western medicine is incredible for broken bones and surgeries. It's amazing. It's amazing. And like implants and things like that need to happen. But for regular maintenance and overall vitality and health, it's terrible. It's terrible. And it's so governed by money and the pharmaceuticals. So I feel very passionate about that. And so the Herbalism Action Days is one strand of many that I just want to help empower people to have relationship with what grows around them and relationship with their own health. And I'm excited as I go to partner with more and more organizations, particularly ocean ocean conservation and protection agencies and organizations and tree planting and reforestation agencies. And these are all areas that I feel my heart is just fully in with that. And so I just want like, as my platform grows, I want it all to feed all of that work that needs to happen.
Yeah, so good. And I know with your newest album that's just about out, By the Light of the Dark Moon, and the new tour I'm sure that you'll be going on to accompany that album, watching all of that grow in your work. And for those that are tuning in, we've got a giveaway coming up around the album just after this lightning fire round. So are you ready to dive in? 5 questions coming at you.
Yes.
Okay, question number 1, fill in the blank. If you really knew me, you would know what?
Oh, I'm so bad at these. If you really knew me, you would know that I love being alone.
Yay. Next question. What is one food that you feel is like a guilty pleasure that you love to indulge in, or that brings you some comfort?
Oh, sourdough toast with goat butter.
Goat butter. Nice. Next question. What is one practice that you do regularly that you feel sets you up for success?
I think having a morning practice. And for me, that's a simple tea ceremony and writing in my notebook and meditating.
Yeah, love that. Next question. What is one piece of advice, if you could turn back time to your 16-year-old self and give her a piece that you know now, what would you say to her?
Just be yourself. Be yourself, as much of yourself as possible. Don't care about what other people think. You are so perfect as you are.
Yeah, so good. And lastly, what does living the unconventional life mean to
you? Breaking out of all the boxes that are imposed onto us and being our most vibrant, colorful, true self.
Yeah, so good. Ayla, everyone, Ayla, tell us about the album that you've been working on and the giveaway that you've got for one of our listeners.
This album is I'm so excited to give it to everyone. It is an album that was born out of a lot of shadow, a lot of darkness, as well as, I feel that this album is a lot about finding the light in the darkness and what becomes visible, our own light that becomes visible through shadows. And I'm just so excited about, just these songs. There's a lot that I also grew into musically through the process of this album and in my own awareness and life. And so it's all in there. There's a lot of different frequencies encoded into this album that I'm very excited to share.
Yeah, By the Light of the Dark Moon. Everyone, you can check it out. And for one of our listeners, Ayla will be giving away a digital copy, so you can head over to unconventionallifeshow.com to apply for that giveaway. And
and I'll be when this is out, I will be at this time on tour. And so March 22nd through May 13th, I believe. There is a whole North American tour happening. So if you are in North America, I very likely am coming near you.
Yeah. And I know you'll be in Boulder, Colorado, hometown, at the Fox Theater on March 30th. And for those that want to follow along with the tour and check out the album, what's the best way to do that and best way to stay in touch with you?
If you go to my website, aylanereo.com, there is all the info's there. And if you join the mailing list, that is the tribe that will send you love notes and things about what.
So good. And we'll put that in the show notes, aylanereo.com, everyone. And Ayla, any last little bits of wisdom, or do you even want to give us a little 20-second song audio bite clip or anything that wants to come through as we wrap up here?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll sing a little, the chorus of this new song that is the single that got released before the album. And it goes, I'm lost in your stars by the light of the dark moon. Just be as you are. Just do as you do. By grace and devotion. By letting go of everything. By breath as it takes you. By the light of the dark moon, I'm lost in your stars.
So good. Yay. And I know that's from the single Stars that you just released. And I just like imagine you like on your piano or in your workflow space, just making all the yummy magic. So thank you so much for that, Ayla, everyone. It was so much good stuff you've given us today on the podcast. Unconventional Life Family, more amazing goodness coming at you soon. Thanks again, Ayla.
Thank you so much.